Welcome to English Boost.
Welcome back to the deep dive. Okay, so today we're tackling something really critical if you're aiming high in your career, especially making that jump from being purely technical to showing real executive
Well,
presence.
exactly. We're talking about nailing that high-stakes project manager interview, the kind you face for those big multinational roles.
And we've got some fantastic material to work with. We're going deep into the transcript of a mock interview, a successful one, between a top career coach, Sarah, and a PM candidate, David Lee.
Yeah, and our mission here, it's not just about, polishing your English or memorizing a few lines.
Sure.
We're actually dissecting the structure, the specific words, the underlying signals that tell a hiring manager, okay, this person gets it. They don't just track tasks, they deliver business value.
I love that focus because honestly, so many really skilled people, especially folks with deep technical backgrounds, they know their stuff, but they struggle to communicate that competence at the right level.
Oh, absolutely. They get stuck talking about features, the what, not the so what.
Right. And this mock interview, David Lee's approach, it's like a blueprint. It shows you how to frame your answers, how to connect your technical skills to actual measurable business results. That's the gap we want to help you bridge today.
So let's get into it. Let's unpack how David built his case, step by step.
Okay, first hurdle, the big one, that dreaded question. So tell me about yourself. It tricks so many people up. They just start reciting their resume chronologically. It's usually pretty dull.
It really is, and it wastes that crucial first impression. But David, according to the transcript and Sarah's coaching notes, he did something very different. He used a disciplined structure.
The past, present, future model.
Exactly that, the past, present, future structure. And it's powerful because it forces you to be concise, to be relevant right from the start. He didn't give them a life story. He gave them a targeted professional narrative. It immediately framed his value.
Okay, let's break that down, the past part. What did he include there? What was the key takeaway for the interviewer?
He kept it super tight, just 8 years in software development. Simple. But the clever part was the blend. He mentioned starting as a software engineer.
Right, so instant tech cred.
Instant tech cred. He speaks the language of the dev team. But then, boom, right away, he pairs that with his master's in business administration.
The engineer who understands business. That's the sweet spot.
It's absolutely critical for a strategic PM role. It signals, I get the code and I get the P&L, I can talk to engineers and I can talk to the board. That dual perspective is non-negotiable at this level.
Makes sense. It sets the stage. But, like you said, the real power often comes in the present.
Yeah.
How did he transition from that background to what he's doing now?
He used a connector, a passion statement. This makes it sound less like a resume point and more like, well, a motivation. He said his passion wasn't just project delivery, but bringing clarity to complex processes.
Ooh, I like that phrase. Bringing clarity to complex processes. Every senior leader listening to that immediately thinks, yes, please.
Exactly. Complexity is the enemy in large organizations. So when he frames his core skill as solving their biggest headache, he instantly sounds like a strategic partner, not just an employee.
And then came the proof. Oh, this is where it's really good, right? The specifics.
Absolutely essential. He didn't just stop at the passion statement. He immediately backed it up. He mentioned managing a portfolio for critical projects at his current company, Tech Innovate.
Okay, 4 projects. But the key was the quantification, wasn't it? That's the piece so many people miss.
100%. The classic mistake is saying, oh, I launched a new platform. Vague. David said, I managed the portfolio, including the launch of our flagship e-commerce platform, wait for it, which drove a concrete 15% revenue increase in the first quarter.
Boom. Concrete, 15%, first quarter. That's the language.
It's power language. It connects his project directly to the bottom line, to revenue. Suddenly, his project management isn't just an operational cost, it's a revenue-generating asset. That's how you get executive attention.
Okay, but let me play devil's advocate for a second. Mentioning 4 projects, doesn't that risk sounding a bit scattered? Did the coach, Sarah, have any feedback on that?
That's a really good point, and yes, she did. Her feedback was clear. Always lead with the highest impact project. While listing the portfolio size shows you can handle scale, that whole present section really pivoted on that single massive win, the 15% revenue boost.
So the takeaway for you listening is maybe mention the scope, but really zero in on your biggest Most quantifiable business impact. That's the headline.
Exactly. Use the rest as context, maybe, but dedicate the bulk of your time to the achievement that speaks loudest in business terms.
Okay, so he nails the past, quantifies the present,
Right.
then the future segment. How did he connect all that to this specific job he was interviewing for without just sounding like he was flattering them?
He customized it heavily. He didn't just say, oh, your company is great. He specifically mentioned aligning with their stated strategic focus on global infrastructure. He knew their priorities.
He did his homework.
Absolutely. And then he directly linked his proven experience. Remember the managing geographically dispersed teams bit? He linked that directly to their challenge of scaling globally. He basically said, your big strategic goal, I have direct, proven experience in making that happen. It became about solving their problems using his past success.
That's smart. It shifts the dynamic completely, which leads us right into that next classic question. So why us? Why this company? People often fumble this with generic stuff about great culture or exciting products.
Right. Generic answers get generic results. David, according to the notes, used a really effective two-pronged approach. It was about mutual benefit, not just what he wanted.
Hey, prong one.
Prong one was about the challenge. He actually leaned into the difficulty. He highlighted the scale of their global projects, the complexity. He essentially said, I'm drawn to this role because it's hard, and managing complex, geographically dispersed teams is exactly what I excel at. It shows confidence and a growth mindset.
Instead of shying away from the difficulty, he embraced it as a selling point.
Okay, I like that. And prong two. Prong two was the immediate, tangible value he could bring. And this is where he tied it back to a common organizational pain point: communication friction.
Ah, yes, the silo problem. Cross-departmental communication.
Exactly. He saw in the job description, maybe implicitly, that they needed someone to streamline cross-departmental communication. He didn't just claim to be a good communicator. He offered proof.
And this was the 40% number, right?
This was the 40% number. He gave a specific example from his previous role, implementing a new agile reporting system that cut down status meeting time by 40%.
Okay, well, let's pause on that 40% for a moment, because numbers are great, but anyone can claim a percentage. How did he make that believable? What was the mechanism behind that saving?
Great question. This really shows the difference between just saying something and demonstrating it. He explained the before state. Teams were spending, on average, something like 15 hours a week just in status meetings, trying to sync up across different time zones. Total nightmare.
15 hours. That's almost half a person's week just talking about work, not doing it.
Precisely. So he implemented this unified system, likely a dashboard, maybe in Jira or a similar tool, where teams updated their status daily, asynchronously. Then crucially, he mandated a change. Synchronous status meetings were capped at, say, 3 hours a week, and they were only for discussing blockers, not general updates.
So the 40% wasn't a guess. It was calculated 15 hours down to maybe 9 hours of actual required sync time, freeing up, 6 hours per team per week?
Exactly. He could articulate the math. And the interviewer isn't just hearing 40% time saved. They're hearing significant reduction in wasted labor costs, more time for actual development, improved efficiency. He translated a process improvement into tangible business benefits.
That's the key translation, isn't it? From technical process manager to someone thinking about operational efficiency and cost savings.
Right.
That's executive thinking.
That's the leap.
Okay, so he's established his motivation, his impact. Now, inevitably, the interview shifts gears. They need to know how he works. The methodology question. This can be a minefield. Did he just pick one? Agile. Waterfall.
No, and that's crucial at this level. For a complex role, especially in a multinational company dealing with, say, global infrastructure, picking just one methodology can actually sound naive or rigid. David advocated for a flexible hybrid model.
Hybrid. Okay, that sounds sensible, but also potentially vague. How did he make that specific?
He broke it down. He was very clear. For the parts of the project involving software development, feature iteration, responding to user feedback, basically, the fast-moving parts, he'd primarily use Agile Scrum. That delivers the speed, the adaptability everyone expects in tech today.
Right, the iterative approach.
Exactly. But, and this is the key for a role like this, he layered the waterfall approach onto the more foundational high-risk elements.
Foundation elements like what needs that waterfall rigor in a global context?
Think about things like major infrastructure deployment schedules, securing data centers in different countries, ensuring compliance with varying international regulations, or managing huge capital budgets. You can't just iterate on those.
No, you need serious upfront planning, sign-offs, lockdown scope for those big ticket items.
Precisely. So waterfall provides the structure for that rigorous planning, for defining scope clearly, for setting major unmissable milestones, and managing the governance around them. The hybrid model shows he respects both the need for speed and the need for control and predictability, depending on the context.
So the flexibility isn't wishy-washy. It's about applying the right tool for the right part of the job.
Yeah.
It demonstrates mature judgment.
Exactly. It's calculated risk management, not indecision.
Okay, methodology covered. What about the tools? Every PM has their preferred stack. He must have listed some specifics.
He did. He mentioned the standard expected tools. Jira was in there, obviously, for sprints, user stories, backlog management. And then for the bigger picture, cross-project planning, resource allocation, dependencies, he mentioned things like Microsoft Project, or perhaps the more advanced features and tools like Asana.
Pretty standard stuff. But you mentioned earlier there was a key coaching insight here. It wasn't just about naming the tools.
Not at all. That's just table stakes. The crucial point, based on Sarah's coaching feedback that David incorporated, was connecting the tools to data integrity and transparency.
Data integrity. Why is that the focus for a senior PM?
Because at a senior level, the tools aren't just for the project team anymore. They are critical communication and governance instruments for the entire organization, especially senior leadership. David didn't just say, I use Jira. He explained that his responsibility is ensuring the data within Jira is accurate, consistent, and trustworthy.
So the C-suite can rely on those reports for making big decisions.
Exactly. Think about it. If the Jira data is emptied, messy tasks aren't updated, story points are inconsistent, progress isn't tracked correctly, then leadership is flying blind. They can't make informed decisions about budgets, timelines, resource shifts. It leads to bad calls, project failures, and erodes trust.
So David positioned the tool not just as a task tracker, but as the engine for reliable status reporting and organizational governance.
Precisely. He elevated the conversation from which buttons do you click to how do you ensure process health and transparency across the business. That's an executive-level concern.
And speaking of credentials that signal that level, he also mentioned having a specific certification, right? We should probably clarify that for listeners.
Oh, absolutely. While maybe not explicitly stated in every single answer, the underlying assumption for a role like this, and certainly something David likely highlighted, is holding a major certification. The gold standard in project management is the PMP, the Project Management Professional Certification from PMI.
And why is mentioning the PMP or something equivalent more than just a line on the resume in this context?
Because it's recognized globally. It signals that you understand and adhere to a formal, widely accepted framework for project governance, ethics, and best practices. It adds instant credibility and weight to everything you say about methodology and process. It's shorthand for, I take this profession seriously and I know the established standards.
Okay, this brings us to the real proving ground, the behavioral questions. This is where they test your past actions as a predictor of future performance. No more hypotheticals. You need concrete examples.
And the only way to effectively answer these is by mastering the STAR method. You absolutely have to structure your stories this way.
Let's quickly recap STAR for everyone. It's situation, task, action, result. It forces you to be specific, structured, and show the outcome.
Couldn't have said it better. It turns a rambling anecdote into a compelling case study of your competence. Let's look at David's first example, which was a classic crisis management scenario.
Right, case study 1, crisis management and risk mitigation. The vendor failure. This sounds juicy. They needed to see how he performed under extreme pressure.
Okay, so the situation was pretty dire. They were about to launch a critical new payment gateway. Everything's lined up. Then just 3 weeks before launch, bam. Their main third-party payment vendor announces a major unfixable security vulnerability in the component they were relying on.
Oh, wow. 3 weeks out. That's a nightmare scenario. Complete showstopper.
Total showstopper. It meant a huge chunk of their architecture had to be rebuilt, like immediately. So the task was multifaceted. First, calm the panic, figure out what was actually feasible now. Second, communicate the bad news, the severity, the unavoidable delay upwards and outwards, transparently but without causing chaos. And third, execute a rapid recovery plan to rebuild that core functionality.
Okay, the pressure is immense. Now, the crucial part, the ascetation. What specific steps did David take? This is where you separate the managers from the leaders.
His actions showed decisiveness. First, no hiding. He called an immediate emergency meeting, locked down the required scope change. He made a bold call. Abandoned the faulty vendor API entirely. Risky, but necessary. He then tasked his top engineers to start building an in-house microservice as a stopgap solution.
Building it in-house with 3 weeks to go, that's a huge gamble.
Huge gamble, but it showed leadership making a tough call under fire. But the real leadership brilliance, I think, was in his communication and monitoring structure. He didn't just hope for the best. He established a daily 15-minute war room stand-up, mandatory, just focused on progress updates, hour by hour if needed, no debates, just status and blockers.
Tight control on execution.
Yeah.
But what about managing the stakeholders, especially the execs? You can't have them breathing down your neck, but they need to know what's happening.
Exactly. He used a tiered communication plan. That's key. The dev team got the intense daily 15-minute sync. Mid-level managers got a concise summary at the end of each day. But for the C-suite,
Yeah.
highly structured, filtered updates only every 48 hours. And the content was different. It wasn't about code commits. It was purely focused on the recovery trajectory, the potential financial impact, the revised launch projection, and the mitigation steps. He gave them the strategic overview they needed without the tactical noise. That shows he understands executive communication needs.
That's really smart. Tailoring the message to the audience.
Yeah.
Okay, so they had to delay. The initial result sounds like, well, a delay?
Yeah.
How did he frame that as a success?
He owned the delay up front. That's critical managing expectations. He clearly communicated, this is going to cause a 2-week delay, here's why, here's the plan. But the silver lining was the microservice they built in-house. It turned out to be not just a temporary fix, but actually more secure, more scalable, and better performing than the original vendor's product.
So it became a permanent part of their system.
Yes, it became a high-performing permanent component. So the success wasn't avoiding the crisis that was impossible. The success was navigating the crisis effectively, delivering a better outcome in the end, and turning a potential disaster into a strategic improvement.
And the final kicker, the learning. He didn't just fix it and move on.
No, he closed the loop. He stated clearly that the big lesson learned from this whole ordeal was the reinforced need for rigorous, comprehensive vendor due diligence across the entire company. This wasn't just about his project. It was about improving the overall system. It shows he thinks strategically about process improvement, not just tactical firefighting.
Powerful story. Okay, let's shift gears to another common behavioral challenge. Conflict resolution and team dynamics. This tests those softer-skilled EQ, mediation, which are often harder to handle well.
Definitely. And just as critical for a PM. So the situation here was classic team friction. 2 senior developers, both highly respected, let's call them Alex and Ben. They had fundamentally different ideas about the best technical approach for a core feature.
And it was getting tense.
Yeah, the transcript mentioned it was spilling into team meetings, passive-aggressive comments, stalled decisions. It was slowing things down and hurting morale. The task for David wasn't just to pick a winning technical solution. He had to resolve the underlying personal tension between Alex and Ben and ensure the team landed on the genuinely optimal technical path for the long term.
Tricky. Picking a side could alienate one of them. Letting it fester was bad too. So his accession plan needed to be subtle.
Very much so. He knew a head-to-head debate in public wouldn't work. So step 1. He met with Alex and Ben separately, in private. The goal wasn't to negotiate yet, but just to let them vent, explain their technical reasoning without feeling attacked, and feel heard, validate their perspectives.
Lowering the emotional temperature first. Smart.
Exactly. Then step 2. He brought them together for a dedicated solution session, but crucially, not just the 3 of them. He invited a neutral, respected, external technical architect, someone with no emotional stake in either solution.
The objective third party. Takes the personalization out of it.
Precisely. And David structured that meeting very carefully. No free-for-all arguments. He set fixed time limits for each of them to present their proposal. Equal airtime. Focused purely on the technical merits.
And then the decision. How did they move from 2 proposals to one agreed path?
This was the masterstroke. He used a decision-making matrix.
Okay, tell me more about that. What criteria were on this matrix? That seems key to making it objective.
Absolutely. Before the meeting, David defined the key business drivers for this feature. He didn't let them argue about elegance or personal preference. The matrix weighted specific objective criteria. For example, it might have been long-term maintainability weighted at 50%, super important for the business, cost efficiency at 30%, and maybe deployment speed at 20%.
So they had to score both proposals against those business-focused metrics.
Exactly. They had to evaluate their own idea and their colleagues' idea using the same objective ruler. It forced them to step back from their own biases and look at it through the lens of what was best for the company long-term. The emotion drained right out of the discussion.
And the result?
Because the process was fair and the criteria were objective, the matrix data basically pointed towards a solution. Interestingly, it ended up being a modified hybrid approach, taking strong elements from both Alex's and Ben's original ideas. They reached a collective agreement based on the data.
So technically optimal solution found.
Mhm.
But what about the relationship between Alex and Ben?
That was the other crucial result. Because they felt the process was fair, their professional respect for each other was restored, they saw the decision wasn't arbitrary or political, and maybe even more importantly, the whole team learned a valuable, repeatable process for resolving future technical disagreements based on objective criteria, not just opinions or personalities. He turned conflict into a coaching moment for the entire team.
Okay, so David's nailed the past performance questions. Now the interview typically looks for that classic question. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? It's not just idle curiosity, is it? It's testing ambition and alignment.
Absolutely. They want to see if your personal career goals fit within their potential pathways. If you say you want to be CEO in 5 years and they're hiring a mid-level PM, that's a mismatch. David's answer, according to the analysis, was ambitious but relevant.
How so? What did he focus on?
He didn't just give a vague, I want to grow answer. He tied his ambition directly back to the company's context and his desired impact. He talked about wanting to master the complexities of global infrastructure projects, which, remember, was the company's core business, and crucially, lead initiatives that have a tangible impact on the bottom line.
So still focused on business results, even in his future vision.
Always. But he also got specific about the roles he was aiming for. This shows he understands typical career progression in project and program management.
What specific roles did he mention? This seems important for signaling serious intent.
He explicitly named program management or potentially a director of PMO, project management office, role as his medium-term targets.
Okay, let's quickly clarify those roles for listeners, because the titles can be confusing. Program manager is different from project manager, right?
Significantly different. A project manager typically runs a specific project with a defined start and end. A program manager oversees a collection of related projects, all working towards a larger strategic business objective. Think launching a whole new product line globally. That's a program made up of many projects. It requires more strategic oversight.
Got it. And director of PMO, that sounds even more strategic.
It is. The PMO director usually doesn't manage projects or programs directly. They are responsible for defining the standards, the methodologies, the governance frameworks, and the tools for how all project management is done across the entire organization or a large division. They shape the system of project execution.
So by naming those specific higher-level roles, David signaled he wasn't just looking for a job, he was looking for a career path within the company, aiming to eventually contribute at a much broader strategic level.
Precisely. It shows long-term thinking and an understanding of organizational structure.
Okay, ambition aligned. Now, for the part that often makes people sweat, the salary negotiation. How did David approach the "what are your salary expectations" question without sounding greedy or selling himself short?
He handled it with confidence, rooted in preparation. The key was, he didn't just blurt out a single number. He presented a well-justified salary range.
A range, okay. What was the range he proposed?
The transcript indicates he proposed $120,000 to $130,000 annually. But the critical part wasn't just the numbers. It was the immediate justification he provided for that range.
Right, you can't just pull numbers out of thin air.
Yeah.
What was his rationale?
He anchored it to objective factors. 3 main things. First, thorough market research. He indicated he'd researched typical salaries for senior PM program manager roles with his level of experience in that specific industry and geographic location. Shows he knows his worth in the current market.
Okay, research first. What else?
Second, his qualifications and experience. He reiterated his 8 years of experience, his PMP certification, backing up his seniority. And third, the most powerful justification, his track record of delivering value. He subtly referenced his past successes, like the multi-million-dollar project launches, the 15% revenue increase. He essentially framed it as, this is the market rate for the kind of tangible business results I consistently deliver.
So it wasn't just, I want X amount. It was, here's the value I bring, and here's the market compensation for that value. Much stronger position.
Much stronger. And then he did something very smart immediately after stating the range.
What was that?
He pivoted the conversation. He didn't dwell on the base salary. He immediately broadened the discussion to the entire compensation package, mentioning things like bonuses, potential stock options, benefits, professional development budgets, etc. He framed it as looking for a mutually satisfactory agreement across the total package.
Ah, that's clever. What does that signal to the interviewer?
2 things, mainly. One, it shows sophistication. He understands that total compensation is more than just the base salary, especially at senior levels. Two, it signals flexibility. He established his baseline expectation with the range, but he's indicating he's willing to negotiate on the different components to reach a deal that works for both sides. It's confident, yet collaborative.
Establishes his value, but keeps the door open for discussion. Nice. Okay, so interview's winding down. It's the candidate's turn to ask questions. This is another moment that reveals a lot. David's choice of questions was apparently quite strategic.
Absolutely. The questions you ask are almost as important as the answers you give. They show your level of engagement, your priorities, what you really care about. Asking about the coffee machine or vacation policy, not a great look at this stage.
Right. Employee mindset versus partner mindset. So, what was his first question?
His first question was pure gold for demonstrating readiness. What is the most immediate, critical challenge that the person taking this role will need to address in the first 90 days?
Ooh, I love that. Why is that so effective?
It does several things. It shows he's thinking about hitting the ground running, about solving problems immediately. It forces the interviewer to be specific about the real pain points the role is meant to address. And crucially, it gives David invaluable inside information about what he'd actually be walking into.
Did he get a specific answer in the mock interview?
He did. The feedback noted, the interviewer mentioned something like integrating a recently acquired smaller company into the existing IT infrastructure. So, boom, David instantly knows the major political and technical challenge waiting for him on day one. He can start mentally preparing.
Fantastic intel.
Okay, second question.
The second one dug into the internal landscape. Can you describe the composition of the team I would be managing, and what is the typical interaction structure between project management and the senior leadership team?
Okay, this sounds like organizational intelligence gathering. Exactly. He's not just asking about his direct reports. He wants to understand the power dynamics. Where does project management sit in the org chart? Do PMs report directly to the CTO or VP level, or are they layers removed? How often and how formally do PMs interact with the C-suite? Is it weekly strategy meetings or just quarterly updates?
So he's essentially mapping out the political terrain and figuring out how he'll need to manage upwards before he even takes the job.
That's exactly it. It shows he understands that influencing senior leadership and navigating the organization are key parts of a senior PM role. Very savvy.
And a third question.
The third question looked longer term, signaling commitment. What does the professional development pathway look like for project managers here? Are there opportunities for internal certifications or further education funding?
Why is this one so effective?
Multiple reasons. First, it clearly signals he's interested in long-term growth within this company. He's thinking career, not just job. Second, it's a subtle way to gauge the company culture around employee investment. Do they actively support learning and development? Do they fund certifications?
Right. A company that invests in its people is often a better place to work long term.
Exactly. If the interviewer gives a vague or non-committal answer, that's a potential red flag for David about how much the company truly values developing its talent. It's a smart due diligence question disguised as a question about personal growth. #tag outro. So if we boil down everything we've learned from dissecting David Lee's interview strategy, a few core principles really stand out for anyone wanting to make that leap to a more senior strategic role.
Okay, let's summarize those key takeaways.
First, structured delivery is everything. You can't just ramble. You need frameworks. That past, present, future for your intro, and absolutely master the STAR method for all your behavioral examples. Structure makes complex experiences clear and impactful.
Makes sense. Structure brings clarity. What's second?
Second, quantify your achievements. Seriously, stop talking about what you did. Talk about the result you achieved. Find the numbers. Was it revenue increase, cost savings, time reduction, efficiency gain? That 15% revenue, that 40% meeting time cut, those are the data points that resonate with business leaders. If you can't measure it, it's hard to manage it, and it's even harder to sell it in an interview.
Quantify, quantify, quantify. Got it. And the third key?
Third, professionalism and strategic thinking in the closing stages. Handle the salary negotiation with confidence, backed by research and your proven value. Use a justified range, pivot to the total package, and use your closing questions strategically to gather intelligence and demonstrate your C-suite readiness. And, like David, Use the right vocabulary.
Yeah, that vocabulary point is important too. The coaching notes highlighted his use of terms like cross-functional, vendor due diligence, program management, data integrity. It wasn't just jargon, it was the language of senior leadership. It signals you belong in those conversations.
Exactly. You need to sound like you're already operating at that level.
Looking back at the whole mock interview, it really strikes me that it was an exercise in proactive control. David wasn't just passively answering questions. He was actively shaping the narrative, guiding the conversation towards his strengths, and aligning them with what he knew the company needed.
That's a great way to put it. He took control. Which, interestingly, brings us back to that vendor crisis story he told. Remember, the big lesson learned.
Comprehensive vendor due diligence, thoroughly vetting your partners before you commit.
Exactly. Investigating them properly.
So here's the final thought we want to leave you with today. How can you, the listener, apply that same principle of due diligence not just to your vendors or your projects, but to the company you're considering joining?
Think about it. David's final questions weren't just polite inquiries, they were strategic probes. Asking about the biggest 90-day challenge, that's investigating the immediate reality. Asking about team structure and leadership interaction, that's mapping the political landscape. Asking about professional development, that's testing their long-term investment in you.
So don't just go into an interview waiting to be evaluated. You need to evaluate them with the same rigor you'd apply to a critical vendor. Use those final questions as your own due diligence toolkit.
Investigate the culture, the stability, the real challenges behind the job description. Mitigate your career risk before you sign on the dotted line. Because choosing the right company is just as critical as them choosing the right candidate. Perform your due diligence.
Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more English Boost lessons.